Hello, welcome to ABC AMBA News. I'm Cynthia Williams. We start today's news with good news of the release of the Vicar General of Mamfe Archdiocese, Monsignor Julius Agbortoko, who was abducted by unknown gunmen last week. His abduction was never orchestrated by Ambazonian fighters, contrary to Cameroon's paid propagandists. His freedom came about thanks to the Defense Council of Manu stepping in to pursue the rogues responsible for the abduction. Robert Bate reports. It's like I was reading it for the first time.
The Vicar General abducted by armed men in Mamfe, the capital town of Manu County, has finally been released. Despite insinuations from La République du Cameroon paid media platforms, our sources say that the genuine Ambazonia Restoration Forces were not involved with this evil action against God's servant. According to reports that was widely spreading on social media and the Guardian Post newspaper yesterday, it was reported that these so-called Amber fighters, in quotes, took him from within the confines of the bishop's residence and have since denied releasing him until a ransom of 20 million francs CFA is paid. The Diocese of Mamfe, Manu County in the southern zone of Ambazonia, expressed its shock with the abduction of the Vicar General of the diocese, Father Julius Agbortoko, by the so-called Ambazonian fighters on August 29, 2021. The Vicar General, who had spent the weekend at Kokoboma for a pastoral visit and the inauguration of the presbytery of the parish, returned to Mamfe after the visit and was thereafter confronted by a group of men who identified themselves as Ambazonian fighters. It is worthy to note that La République du Cameroon soldiers also have black t-shirts and dark jeans purporting with arms as Ambazonia fighters. In a press release by the Chancellor of the Diocese of Mamfe, Father Sebastian Sinjo, he revealed that the abductors have demanded 20 million francs CFA in ransom to be paid for the release of the Vicar General. The Mamfe Diocese has condemned this latest attack on the church by what they described as separatist fighters and urged for the release of the abducted priests. The interim government of Ambazonia, on her part, has called on the media to exercise and stay professional and investigate properly before labeling the Ambazonia Restoration Forces, who are fighting a just cause to protect their nation from annihilation. The IG went further to say such is a ploy by the rogue regime of French Cameroon to paint a negative image of the nation of Ambazonia and cover up for the genocidal onslaught in southern Cameroon. Robert Bate on Prime Report with ABC AMBA News.
Only a few years ago in Cameroon, the police were considered beyond reproach. The gendarmes were regarded as demigods. The BIRs, or Cameroon's Rapid Intervention Battalion, carried with them this aura of invincibility. But the rise of the Ambazonian restoration fighters has rubbished all of this, and they're not done yet. Ambazonian restoration forces are getting better by the day, despite international conspiracies and BIA's schemes. Our reporter Mike Fusey brings the story.
As if the punishment that was meted on the criminal soldiers of La République du Cameroon during the past week wasn't enough, The expendables from Ndian emerged from the jungle to exact even more punishment on a contingent of La République du Cameroon soldiers yesterday. This is only a follow-up to another attack last week by the expendables from Ndian under the command of Field Marshal Ten Kobo, which resulted in the demise of 15 La République du Cameroon scout soldiers. Given the multiplicity of attacks at different locations throughout the territory of Ambazonia, it has become very difficult for the soldiers of La République du Cameroon to predict where the next attack would occur. At the start of this senseless war declared by great-grandfather Paul Biya of La République du Cameroon on the Ambazonian people, our restoration fighters had no weapons, so they used whatever they could lay their hands on, from catapults to den guns to AKs and locally manufactured IEDs to Lifances and now RPGs. At the time, they called us 2 cubes of sugar. They called us rats. They called us roaches. They called us Biafrans. They even mocked at us by our name by calling us Ambazozo. And yes, they called us dogs. Well, those dogs have experienced years of torture and have thus turned into wild dogs, and they're doing exactly what wild dogs know how to do best, and that is to bite. The Ambazonian restoration fighters have been able to come this far despite an international conspiracy to block their access to the tools they need to fight the enemy. We have witnessed the increased diplomatic pressure from La République du Cameroon on Nigeria to clamp down on our supply routes. This has been made worse by the so-called alliance between Ayabacho and Nnamdi Kanu. It is said that necessity is the mother of invention. This blockade on our path to these materials has released the creativity and ingenuity of the Ambazonian restoration fighters, and they now produce most of their material at a fraction of the cost of imported material. We have all seen the numerous inventions of a Field Marshal of Lobialem. The Ambazonian restoration fighters have become experts at producing and detonating IEDs with exact precision. A few years ago, the police were considered beyond reproach. The gendarmes were regarded as demigods. The bees carried with them an aura of invincibility. The rise of the Ambazonian restoration fighters has rubbished all of this, and they are not even done yet. If we were to consider where the Ambazonian restoration fighters started and where they are now, it will be safe to say that the restoration of the independence of Ambazonia is but certain. Mike Fusey for Prime Report on ABC Amba News.
Updates from last week's draft in Mazam County confirmed that at least 50% of the over $325,000 raised has already come in as cash. If anything, this is an indication that Ambazonians are more focused on paying for their freedom now more than ever before. President Samuel Sacco continues to call on Ambazonians to fund and redeem their war draft pledges through the interim government to avoid breeding warlords that could cause instability post-independence. In the meantime, Ambazonians are reminded that the war draft moves to Mencham County on Saturday. Comfort Comfer has the story.
The determination of Ambazonians in restoring their independence is at its peak. Everybody, from the Ambazonia Restoration Forces to the social media warriors and the diaspora, are very focused, doing what they need to do in order to see this war come to its logical conclusion. ABC Amber News has been informed by the chairman of Mezam County, Mr. Theo Fusi, that over half of the $325,570 drafted last Sunday has already been cashed in, and many more people are planning to redeem their pledges as soon as possible. This shows that the people of Ambazonia heard the plea of President Sako last weekend when he said, and I quote, "Nobody wants to do this free job forever. Please, I and my generals are begging that we hurry to arrive Buea sooner than later," end of quote. Many Ambazonians describe Dr. Sako as a man of few words. However, the impact of his messages leads to a catalyst reaction that moves Ambazonians one giant step closer to the logical end of the war, which is a free Ambazonia. La République du Cameroon and their sponsored agents and Ambazonian comrades who are against the interim government have been wondering how Dr. Sako keeps winning the people's trust. The adversaries have been working tirelessly to sabotage every effort that the IG are making to liberate the former British Southern Cameroons, but Ambazonians seem to be even more committed in funding the war through their LGAs. As far as ABC Amber News can perceive after following the Ambazonia war draft every week, the CIC Dr. Sako has been doing the good job of pointing the citizens of Ambazonia to the right direction. In his speech during the Mezam draft, for example, he beckoned patriotic citizens of Ambazonia to fund restoration forces who are loyal to the interim government instead of, and I quote, private security forces and micro-armed groups, end of quote. This was because, according to him, and I quote, "When this liberation war shall end, soldiers under the state authority will easily work for peace, but independent armed contractors will be a problem," end of quote. Ambazonians have gone through a lot of tough times for over the years, and the least thing they would wish themselves is instability after restoration. For the past weeks, the ARFs have been calling in during the award ceremonies and promising that they will do their share of sending the enemy packing if they get the financial support from the diaspora. And the result of the fierce battles between the La République du Cameroon uniformed men and the ARLs, like the indomitable Field Marshal No Pity of Ngoketunja, the fearless General Isobu of Bui County, have proven that they are really talk and do, as the Mendables 100 under the lion-hearted Field Marshal 10 Kobo of Ndian call themselves. It is obvious that Ambazonians are more focused on their victory now than ever. Here is an excerpt from a post on Mr. Nelson Uchiba's wall on Facebook. Ambazonians, our priority is to draft and free all counties /Ambazonia. All counties matter. Ambazonia first. This post resonated with many others across various social media platforms, showing that Ambazonians, like their president Samuel Ikome Sako, are settled for nothing less than a free Southern Cameroons. Comfort Convo on Prime Reports with ABC Amber News.
In foreign news today, the Sudan Sovereignty Council President Abdul Fattah al-Burhan met with Chad AGK President Deby and his accompanying delegation at the Republic Palace in the capital, Khartoum. El-Burhan said in a press statement before his return that Sudan stands with Chad in its response to the fight against terrorist groups from Jaras. Observers say Abiy makes such moves to consolidate power. Our correspondent from Lagos, Nigeria, Eunice Momo, reports.
The chairman of the Chadian Transitional Military Council, Muhammad Idris Deby, on Monday visited Sudan in a bid to solicit regional support in rebuilding the North Central African states. The Sudan Sovereignty Council President Abdel Fattah al-Burhan met with Chad President Deby and his accompanying delegation at the Republic Palace in the capital, Khartoum. Al-Burhan said in a press statement that Sudan stands with Chad in its response to the fight against terrorist groups from Honduras before his return to Khartoum. He said the meeting focused on the bilateral relations, security and economic cooperation between the two countries. The meeting focused on regional issues including situation in the Central African Republic, Chad, and the peace process in Sudan. Also discussed challenges in Central and West Africa, in particular the Sahel region. In a statement, Deby said his visit was also meant to strengthen the cooperation and relations between Sudan and Chad. Faced with related security issues, the two countries embraced the integration, concerted efforts, and joint cooperation with the African Union in the field of border security, the fight against terrorism, and the fight against cross-border security violations. Deby further stated that they will intensify efforts to reinforce the security and stability of Sudan and Chad. He also tweeted that the two countries share a common destiny. It is worth noting that the death of President Idris Deby and selection of son as interim leader was greatly condemned by rivals who called it dynastic coup. Chad's main opposition parties said the army's appointment of President Idris Deby's son as the nation's new leader was an institutional coup. Deby, 68, who had been in power for 3 decades, died after being shot as the battled rebels on the front line. The rebels too had objected to the move, saying Chad is not a monarchy. Muhammad Idris Deby Itno, also known as General Kaka, was in charge of the Presidential Guard and is programmed to lead the country for 18 months until elections. Observers say the French President Macron's attachment with the young interim president could be an endorsement, and that whatever he is doing now could all be in an attempt to consolidate power before the 18-month time expires. There are also questions as to the possibility of democratic elections taking place in Chad. The African sub-region of CEMAC and the politics of succession brings to the look of every observer questions that do not make satisfactory responses. First, it was President Kaliba of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Second, Omar Bongo of Gabon. Now Idris Deby of Chad. It is also being rumored that Obiang Nguema of Equatorial Guinea and Biya Paul of neighboring French Cameroon, who have both been in power for at least 4 decades, are both grooming their sons for takeover. Political prophets had long predicted that the CEMAC sub-African region was a time bomb due to the indecency with leadership and defaced democratic protocols by dictators in power. Perhaps the 5-year-long war forced on southern Cameroon, the only state that was colonized by Great Britain and which, virtue of its identity, does not fit in the current geopolitical setup of the CEMAC, is a trigger of this prophecy. Eunice Momo on Prime Reports with ABC Amber News.
In business news, Dr. Ngwambe continues with his presentation on businesses that could make you a millionaire in 2021-22. Today, his target is the U.S. oil companies, the Nigerian Civil War, and the origins of opacity in the Nigerian oil industry and France's interest. Dr. Ngwambe?
Cynthia, in today's discussion, I will look at the oil boom of 1964 to 1965 to lay a foundation for a clear understanding. Standard histories of Nigeria attribute the nation's first oil boom to the 1970s, when global oil prices skyrocketed. This is a mistaken assumption, as research indicates a substantial boom occurred between 1964 and 1965. Nigerian oil production began in 1956, when Royal Dutch Shell, as Shell Darcy, discovered oil at Oilibiri in the eastern region. By 1965, both Shell and Gulf Oil were producing, the former from onshore concessions in the east and the latter from offshore concessions in the Midwestern region. 5 other companies, Société Africaine de Pétrole, Azienda Generale Italiana Petroli, Phillips Petroleum Company, Emulsius, and Mobil, had struck oil and were in the early stages of the development, and Tenneco had obtained concessions but not found oil. In the eastern city of Port Harcourt, more than 25 service companies had established offices, and a new refinery was opened in September 1965. The American Embassy in Nigeria reported on the boom atmosphere of Port Harcourt, citing 1964 as the benchmark for when Nigeria moved from a marginal producer to a major world oil producer of great promise for the future. Crude output increased from 84,000 barrels per day in January 1964 to 301,352 barrels per day in August 1965, with an attendant increase in export revenues from 20 million pounds to 60 million pounds, ranking Nigeria the 13th largest oil producer in the world. Nearly all of Nigeria's oil was produced in the eastern region, 83% by Royal Dutch Shell and 9.4% by Safrap. The allocation system in place at the time accorded 50% of the rents and royalties to the region of origin, 20% to the federal government, and 30% to a pool from which distributions were made to all regions in proportion to their population size. This system was acceptable when Nigeria's main exports were agricultural products, which all regions produced, and tin and manganese, mined in the north. But with oil revenues accruing at such a rapid rate, northerners grew increasingly fearful of falling behind in receipt of distributions. Tensions also increased due to the rash of new oil discoveries in the Midwest. Gulf Oil had begun to produce there in 1965, and the boom environment attracted proposals for ancillary industries, for example, liquefied petroleum gas, stock feed, and fertilizer plants. This provoked competition between the Midwestern and Eastern regions over where to locate these industries. In these earliest stages of the oil boom, both Nigerians and independent oil companies carried with them business practices that embraced elements of the opaque. As G. Ugo Nwokeji has pointed out, the eastern oil-producing regions had been trading internationally for 6 centuries. Much of this history revolved around the Atlantic slave trade, which, like the oil industry, was extremely capital-intensive. In such a system, locals profited by taking on the role of being middlemen to supply captives to the chartered companies that remained on the coast. Thus, the benefits of the slave trade accrued to the overseas slavers and their local counterparts in the same way that the rush of petrodollars have flowed almost wholly to the political classes. Both trades reflect the baroque, contested, and often unaccountable operation of the world of joint ventures and business alliances. Given the deep history of these strategies, the middleman system was a standard way of doing business in Nigeria. Likewise, the international oil industry operated through a system of national cartels designed to ensure price stability and create an advantage in regional markets. In Europe, cartels were often defended with questionable or aggressive tactics, for example, suppressing data regarding estimated oil reserves, using press campaigns to influence public opinion and defame public figures, paying bribes, and it should be noted some of these practices and tactics occur in Nigeria as well. These practices had become ingrained in local industries, customs, and behavior patterns, and were institutionalized as the normal way of doing business. Thus, opacity was a characteristic of both Nigerian and independent oil companies and their practices, shaping the way they interacted over time. On Friday, we will take a look at investments in opacity at the outset of the Civil War. I'm Dr. Gwambe on Prime Reports with ABC Amba News. Stay tuned.
In sports news, Real Madrid is inching closer to finally securing the services of Kylian Mbappe before the summer transfer window slams shut. The Spanish Giants have had an offer worth 215 million euros being accepted by Paris Saint-Germain, bringing them closer to signing their top target. Kylian Mbappe has been nothing short of a sensation since his breakout campaign in senior club football back in 2016-17 season with AS Monaco. Over the last 4 seasons, following his move to PSG in the summer of 2017, the Frenchman has only gone from strength to strength after winning the 2018 FIFA World Cup in France. To date, Mbappe has amassed an excellent record of 135 goals and 63 assists, appearing in 175 games for Ligue 1. However, his future with Parc des Princes is highly uncertain as he has entered the final year of his deal with PSG and with Real Madrid hot on his trails. Real Madrid have been taking a keen interest in Mbappe pretty much since he first broke out at Monaco. Since then, Los Blancos have been heavily linked with the 22-year-old, who has become their top target ever since Cristiano Ronaldo departed the club back in 2018. Indeed, Real Madrid has been unable to fully replace their all-time top scorer over the last 3 years, with Karim Benzema doing the bulk of the scoring. As a result, with his position at PSG becoming dicey, Real Madrid seems to have sensed an opportunity, having launched the offensive for him in the past week or so. In fact, the Merengues have already had a couple of bids rejected by PSG, although their latest offer appears to have been too attractive to turn down. As per Rudy Giletti, Real Madrid launched a bid worth 215 million euros for Mbappe, with PSG accepting this offer. What now remains to be seen is if the Spanish Giants can move quickly enough to compete for the formalities of the transfer before the transfer deadline. For now, it looks like Mbappe is finally headed to Real Madrid in what will be a mega money 215 million euro deal.
I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time. I need that.
The bite and blow boulou dictatorship of Paul Biya, the president of French Cameroon, is at it again. They demand dual nationality when you come to do business. When it comes to winning matches, for example, they say Samuel Eto'o is Cameroonian. However, he is reminded of his dual nationality when he returns to do business. What is this all about? Does it even make sense? Tar PK has been following up on the trend and brings the report.
The hypothesis of a candidacy of Samuel Eto'o for the presidency of the Cameroon Football Federation has created a crisis of confidence between the outgoing president of the body and the general secretary. The rumor persists. Samuel Eto'o could indeed run for the presidency of the Cameroon Football Federation, FECAFOOT, next October. The best striker in the history of the AFCON has not yet officially declared himself, but the mere hypothesis of his candidacy has set fire to the relations between the outgoing president of the body and his secretary general. and shockingly places a question on Samuel Eto'o Lopichichi's nationality. Seydou Mbombo Joya and Benjamin Didier Banlock, reputedly close to the former FC Barcelona striker, are no longer on good terms. The divorce between the two men was pronounced on Monday, 9 August, with the suspension of the Secretary General by the President. Benjamin Didier Banlock is now under disciplinary proceedings. My contract runs until 2023, said Banlock. I am suspended as a precautionary measure. I am not dismissed for the moment, so I am waiting, said the disgruntled Banlock. It's a disciplinary procedure, but an administrative one, explained the president of Fecafoot. An interim general secretary has been appointed. It is the director of communication of the federation, Parfait Siki. However, there is widespread confusion about the real reasons for this crisis. Multiple versions place the possible candidacy of Samuel Eto'o at the heart of the division between the two leaders. Samuel Eto'o played a key role in the election of Seydou Mbombo Joya in December 2018. One can even say that it was partly thanks to him that the president was elected. And in the same way, it is also thanks to Samuel Eto'o that Benjamin Didier Banlock was recruited to Fecafoot and confirmed as General Secretary in January 2019, says a source close to the president of Fecafoot. However, according to this informant who masters the file, the boss of Cameroonian football and his former mentor are no longer on the same side. It is said that Samuel Eto'o and Seydou Mbombo Joya are no longer talking to each other in the president's entourage. Eto'o is said to have asked him to consider handing over the reins so that he or another candidate he could support could take over the helm of Fecafoot. A proposal declined by Mr. Mbombo Joya, he murmured. It would appear that the SG chose Eto'o. Even if he opted for silence, the outgoing president intends to run for another term. His previous election was annulled midway through by the Court of Arbitration for Sport, CAS, due to a number of irregularities. Seydou Mbombo Joya does not intend to let his second chance pass. This stubbornness is seen as an affront by those who support the idea of a candidacy of Samuel Eto'o. And this is the case, we learn, of the Secretary General. It so happens that President Seydou asked the SG to accompany him and him alone in his re-election project, but the SG chose Eto'o, given that he and Mr. Seydou have practically become adversaries. All those who know the SG know that he is a man of principle, a loyal man, said a close friend of Benjamin Didier Banlock. The Electoral Commission of Fecafoot has already been set up. In the coming days, candidates will have to make their intentions known to the public. As this election draws closer, the Electoral Committee has now specified that candidates with dual citizenships shall not be deemed eligible to stand for president. The bite and blow bully dictatorship of B. Vondo at it again. A petition for dual nationality is needed. When it comes to winning matches, Eto'o is Cameroonian. When it comes to advocating for Cameroon to host the AFCON, Eto'o is Cameroonian. When it comes to showcasing national flag, Eto'o is Cameroonian. Today, he is reminded of his dual nationality when he wants to go into business. This is indeed shocking, but not surprising, at least to ABC Amber Newsroom. It is no doubt that the Eboloan Fang brothers have hijacked the nation and set in place a system that works in favor only for them and all their proxies. Could this be a lesson for the ace striker and Africa's best of all time? Why fans are disgruntled, we are following up on this story very closely. On Prime Reports, with ABC Amba News.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to ABC Amba News. That's all the news we have for you today. I'm Cynthia Williams signing off. Please stay tuned to ABC Amba TV.